I still have all my VHSs that I would bought through my teen years. I hung out at Blockbuster a lot, and that's where I found a lot of like just off the beaten path, sometimes some indie films. Like there was an indie movie called Tully that was out that I watched, and I found Raising Victor Vargas like in a Blockbuster tent, bin and all these different things. And I was like, wow, these are, beautiful films. So some of my taste was driven by the economics of the Blockbuster red circle sticker on movies.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another one of CONVOS. Today, joining us is another very special guest, director, screenwriter, actor, Summer Shelton, and we are here to kind of discuss her new project, a new movie that just came out. So, first of all, thank you for joining us and taking time out.
Thank you. It's exciting to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
Okay, so obviously, you have a new movie out, you and I. We're going to be discussing that and kind of like everything that went into the filming of that and the process. But before we get to that, we kind of want to like start from the beginning. Like, how did you kind of get your start in film?
Yeah, I actually, I didn't grow up around a lot of entertainment and things. So I think, just starting probably in like the world of theater. But then in like undergrad, I was very interested in like ad campaigns and advertising and moving images. And it slowly led me to find filmmaking. And I started out assuming like, oh, the way you make movies is you just be in them. I didn't really know any other jobs. So I started in my early 20s doing a little bit of acting, like, some short films and a bit role in a movie here or there. But then after I taught high school for a while, at like age 26, I decided like, you know what, I really want to learn more about behind the scenes. So I went to film school for 1 year. And after I'd had a graduate degree and everything, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to learn what people do. And then while I was there during that year, a filmmaker, Ramin Barani, came to North Carolina, which is also his home state where I live now, and to make his third feature, Goodbye Solo. So I just started helping him, and he was really like my film school. So I learned a lot from him about how to like make movies and stuff. And that's kind of how I got my start, just really kind of right place, right time, but always just pursuing your interest as it kind of leads you.
Okay. Like I said, you said you didn't grow up like around necessarily the entertainment world and all that aspect, but obviously like something drew you to it. So what were some of your favorite films and maybe like directors that made you decide like, this is what I want to do?
Well, I grew up in a very rural area, so like a farm out in the middle of nowhere. And most of the movies I watched growing up was like things I rented literally at a gas station. So I watched a lot of like 80s movies. But my parents weren't so strict with what I watched. So I did get to watch some serious movies like Kramer versus Kramer and even, with some serious dramas. But then I remember very much being impacted by watching like My Girl as a young girl, because the character was about the same age I was. And I had a friend that was like Thomas J. And then, Reese Witherspoon had a movie out called The Man in the Moon, when she was, starting her career. Okay, yeah. And it's also set in a rural town. So it's finding these like narrative dramas kind of early, in the late 80s, early 90s that really were American dramas. It was never really specifically director driven. I didn't really know to think about like, oh, who directed this movie or who wrote this movie really until I went to film school and started to learn a lot from Ramin, who's extremely versed in world cinema. And so I started to then, deep dive into the Criterion collection, and I soon found Jean-Luc Godard, and then world changed. And I was like, oh my goodness, so French New Wave, seeing the 400 Blows really kind of was a big deal to me, but also My Life to Live, and been stumbling upon Andrea Arnold and watching Fish Tank and, seeing the works of today female filmmakers has always continued to inspire me. But, I watched too a lot of old movies with my mom and black and white movies, Casablanca, but also a lot of funny movies, Planes, Trains and Automobiles, anything with Chevy Chase, Richard Pryor, stuff to make you laugh.
Okay. So you got like a wide kind of range of different films and
So
exposure to
wide.
things.
Yeah, it was really like whatever was at the gas station or whatever Disney had out at the time. Like I have to admit, but then as a teenager, Blockbuster was out, and I was a really big
Mm,
nerd about where they used to have that deal where you could like buy two movies, get one free. And I like would do the
yep.
math and like find like, oh, which is the $4.99 and the $6.99, the $9.99. If I pair them right, I can get like three movies, and I would just cipher. So I still have all my VHSs that I would bought through my teen years. I hung out at Blockbuster a lot, and that's where I found a lot of like just off the beaten path. Sometimes some indie films, like there was an indie movie called Tully that was out that I watched, and I found Raising Victor Vargas like in a Blockbuster tent, bin, and all these different things. And I was like, wow, these are beautiful films. So some of my taste was driven by the economics of the Blockbuster red circle sticker on movies.
Yeah, I mean that was an era. That was such an era of movies and film, and like I think the way people discovered film was just so much different back then. Like you could just go into a
Yeah,
shop and not even know what you're looking for, but somebody at the
yeah,
front desk might have like an idea of some cool film that came out. It just kind of puts you onto things in like a much more organic way than let's say like
yeah.
streaming does now.
It felt so pure, and it felt to be tangible and to go in there and touch the boxes. But then also it's almost like every look to me, like I had never at that time in my life, I hadn't really traveled a lot. So hadn't at that time in my life been to a lot of museums and things. But for me, I would go in Blockbuster, and every little box was like some image, whether it was real to life or fantastical. I just thought all these images were so special, and that's what would draw me in. So to me, going to Blockbuster was just like a museum where every VHS box was almost like a painting, and you got to touch it. It didn't have to just sit
Yeah.
there on the wall. You could grab it and read
Yeah.
it, and then you could see like which ones everyone got because they would all be missing. And so I'd go look for the underdogs. I would be like, oh, what's over here? That kind of thing.
Yeah, it was such a great era. Such a great era,
Oh, I
especially
miss
like,
it.
I just feel like it brought through like a different appreciation for the film, because it was such
Hmm.
a physical thing and like everybody loved going to Blockbuster. It was like an event to like go and see what you can
Hmm.
find and like kind of dig through things and find something that maybe somebody else hasn't known. And like, I mean, you spoke about how like you grew up in a very rural era and like
Hmm.
movies kind of opened you up to like a whole new world. And I
Hmm.
think that
Hmm.
that aspect, especially like before the internet, was such a big part of
Yeah.
what movies were kind of made for and like what
Hmm.
they did for a lot of people and why people had such a stronger connection, I think, back then when film was so
Hmm.
like at its zenith.
I think so too. And I remember being drawn I remember like I would always we'd have the standard order of operations, everyone come in the living room, you each have your spot. I would sit on the floor, you get whatever snack you're going to have, and everyone sit down because once it starts, we're not going to like stop it, So
No.
it's always, these type of, behaviors. And I remember though, when movies started to really emotionally impact me, it wasn't just entertainment. Like I remember the first time I saw American Beauty, and
Mm.
it was when I was a teenager again, and Thor Birch's character I could connect with. But I just remember the scene where Lester Burnham throws the plate against the wall. It was just that family dinner, and I was like, ooh, and I think it was too just being at an age where I was a teenager and starting to see my parents as real people, adults. And then, in that same year, that was also like the year not too far away from like Titanic, but then also like The Full Monty was out. Jack
Mm.
Nicholson, As Good as It Gets. And I really started to like search out movies and started to be like, oh, well, I'm going to watch all the Oscar movies. And so I started to
Yeah.
like slowly develop like little traditions with myself a little bit. So it's really just kind of like scavenger hunts for me, or finding little things and be like, oh, okay, this year I'll like try to watch all the Oscar movies, or, stuff like that.
Yeah. That was a great
Hmm.
period. Absolutely great period.
Oh
So
man, it was so good. Like I still I have to say I have burned up some of those VHS tapes, like watching them. Anytime like you just want a good laugh, like we would put on the Birdcage or the Full Monty, just stuff like that. That's like a little bit kind of dark humor and off,
Yeah.
but still really fun. And it's strange being from such a Southern place. I really wouldn't expect that to be like what my parents would also be drawn to in certain ways. But it also just made me feel like, it just felt nice to see things that weren't always, you kind of have a pendulum. Like I either wanted to watch things that I very much connected with and could see myself in, or things that like showed me different people and different ways of living, different than what I was around every day. Because I knew there was a big world out there, and I knew I wanted to see it. And I loved people, and I loved learning about different people. And so movies was kind of like my way to really kind of like travel, since I didn't get to a lot. So when I would watch a movie, I would feel like I was like on a little trip learning about something, or, being an eavesdropper or something.
Yeah, I always said like movies back then were definitely like, they were the original gateway for people before like the internet and everything. That's where you really kind of like got exposed to different ideas and different things and different like parts of the world that you might never even heard of before at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, who as a kid didn't want to I want to go to the Goonies rock?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You watch things like that. It's like, ooh, is that a real place? Like, oh, like I want to go there.
I mean, I think that's why movies like Indiana Jones kind of hit so hard at the time, because they were like such otherworldly kind of experiences. But I think now with the internet, like you kind of see everything of the world, that you kind of don't have that same adventurous connection, I think, with movies that maybe back then.
Yeah. And you get Instagram now. Like you can, it's like you got Polaroids in your pocket all day long. Somebody just snaps some, boom, there it is, or whatever. Versus like, I always, even as a child, even in like elementary school, when we would get to go to the library for free time, I always went to the section of the library that had like geography books. I just remember there were these hard books, and they had the most smoothest pages on the inside and these glossy pictures. And the pages were so beautiful. And I would just we had like almost every country had a book. So I would just get one country at a time and just sit there and look through them and be like, wow, are these real places? Like, this is amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, that brings guys to my next kind of question is like, what do you think about the current state of the industry? Because obviously, like, it's gone through a lot of changes, a lot of kind of upheaval, and then the whole strike thing. Like, there's just a lot of things happening amongst the film industry, and like, kind of like people are kind of not really sure about the future. So, what do you kind of think about the state of the industry as it is today?
It's scary, to be honest with you. It's hard. It's hard to navigate. It's really hard, I feel like, to break through the noise at times. Like I was, talking to a stranger today on the plane, and asking me about film and everything. And I was like, you know what? It's like, 'cause they didn't really know indie film too much. And I was asking, I said, like, do you remember like when several years back, and when Walmart first came out, and then the main streets had a really big hit for a while. And then now the farm to table movements come back, and main streets are slowly like having their birth again. And I feel like, for me, I just feel like I'm ready for the farm to table wave of coming back to indie cinema a little bit. Like it's a catch-22, because I'm very grateful for the opportunity that platforms like streamers do to have my film out there and be able to be in so many households. It's not just 5 channels anymore. Like you can have so many opportunities. But then there also is a little bit of the beauty of curation in certain ways is a little bit different now, and I think that's what I am excited about in terms of, having that indie wave come back. Like when I first started making films, kind of the new neorealism, I remember, was the term coming out of filmmakers and doing things. And I would like to see indie films have that kind of wave again. And I know the filmmakers are out there. There's so many amazing films being made and stuff out there, and so many films being made that's not being seen. And that's what scares me the most, is the ability for people to be discovered is, I feel, a bit hard. And that's, obviously I'm going through that now with putting out this film and trying to navigate that and do all I can to, be the tiny movie that we are and try to like reach people. So I'd be very honored to be able to make a film or a series or something with a large streamer and things. But I do hope that in some way there could be like some very special initiatives or curation that is made to spotlight emerging artists in a meaningful way, which would be great.
Yeah, man, that's some great points. I mean, we cover music a lot as well on this kind of platform. So like I find like film and music are kind of going through like the same type of issues, like as much as streaming has opened up like potential and like the amount of film and amount of content being put out, it's almost like overwhelming to the point where people don't know where to go or can't find necessarily the good stuff because there's just a nonstop, like never ending amount of it. And like you said, like there's far less curation than it is before. Like you couldn't just get a film out there. Now it's like, oh, we just need something, so just put it out, instead of like, is it really like worth putting it out and putting effort in? Like that curation is definitely something that I have noticed has definitely been missing from like.
And I also noticed like the scavenger hunt of finding something doesn't exist anymore because you have a remote. You can click, and even the same thing in music. You want to put on, any type of music streaming thing that's going to automatically tell you like this, maybe this. And that's very different than like going in and like flipping through the CDs until you like your eye catches some weird cover and you're like, whoa, what is this music? And, and then buying it and it's like taking a risk on instincts seems to like not exist as much anymore in consumerism. And I even find that even in myself, I'm like, I'll read 10 reviews before I'll even buy like a broom, and like cross-reference that when like, just take the darn risk, like see the one like caught your eye and just get it and see what happens, and I feel like for film,
that much information out there.
It is a lot of information out there and it's a lot of options out there. And, people, I think, wanting to feel like they're getting the best thing or the right thing or the most perfect thing because we're always curating these images of our lives in social media, where in reality it's just like, take a risk, like it's like you don't talk, like people don't talk to strangers anymore, and like take a risk like meeting someone just random, not like curated on like some device for you to like have these meaningful connections. And I think those patterns are developing in our cultural consumerism as well, with music and art and things. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, there's definitely a term for it. I forget what it's called, where you like scrolling through or like Netflix, whatever.
Doom scroll.
Doom scroll. That's what it is. And you end up not even picking anything or just going back to the show that you watched like a million times just because there's too much out there. Like, it's like, I don't even know what to watch. I just keep watching the same things. Like,
I catch myself sometimes as like, well, shit, I could be halfway through a movie by the time I've picked out what to watch.
Yeah.
That I do a lot. Missing. I find myself on, I love Canopy. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but that one, you can also access a lot like through your library and things, but it's a really cool platform. And I like, it is like curation of, the way they have their categories and old cinema and new cinema, indie films. I feel like I can get my little art house niche and be able to access those films on Canopy, kind of, what I like. So shout out to Canopy.
Shout out to Canopy. I mean, as much as like mainstream kind of is in this weird nebulous kind of shape right now, I do think that indie film is kind of having a moment. Like, I think some of the most successful films that have come out in the last few years have been the smaller, either middle like the ground studios or small independent films are the ones that are being the most successful, earning the most money from what they're putting out and like getting the actual results that they're looking for. I mean, like I always look at like A24 and like movies that they put out always have like huge returns for them, because it's like they're not necessarily playing to an algorithm. They're just putting out what they think is good, and it's like resonating with people.
I think it is. I mean, A24 to me is like, I mean, that's like the holy grail. Like a lot of filmmakers like would love to collaborate and work with them, as would I. And, a lot of my most recent films have probably had like 10% of the budget those films have. But I love the fact that I have been in film since A24 started, and seeing how committed they are to their vision and their voice and their risk taking, and seeing it thrive. And that is aspirational, of course. Yeah. So, that would be, it is nice. You're right, to see, like you say, it's kind of like, it's a little odd, like, to go from like the major studios out in LA, like all the major ones. And now there are a lot of these mini majors, out there popping up, making such good, bold content and everything. And I'd like to be a part of those.
Yeah. I mean, they're definitely doing it right. Like, I mean, they're one of those type of studios that you look at, like, you can tell, like, oh, they actually just love film. They're not just in it to make money.
And they celebrate film. Like, even like you go and look at the merchandise they do, and the things like to celebrate film, like just nailing it, like they understand like what people that love film like to do, which is have tokens, memorabilia, feel a part of like a special little club of like knowing that these special things about this piece of art and stuff. And I love, that they aren't putting those things to the side and discounting like the film lovers, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's something that like the big studios have kind of lost touch with, is the like cinephiles, the people that love film. They're the ones that really push your movies. They're the ones that people come to hear what they like. Like, they're the ones that like really give movies legs instead of just like the straight mainstream. And I think they kind of lost that touch.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best gifts that someone has given me recently, a most lovely filmmaker, Jen Gerber, gave me like this big, beautiful beach towel from A24. This like a film, still like a, film reel clip, and, it has the perfs on the around it, and it's like all the aspect ratio stuff. And I was like, oh my God, this is like so cool.
Yeah, we got to like do some interviews and stuff around like, I think Beau's Afraid, and like just seeing how they kind of treated the role and stuff. It was like pretty impressive, and just like, okay, like this, you love film, and like the fact that you even like kind of greenlit this type of movie is like, it's impressive.
It is. They got something going. They're batting 1,000. I guess that's what you say. I don't know all the sports metaphors, but I guess with the World Series, that one's okay.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, they say you got into acting kind of early on when you first started like getting into film. Like, what are some of the differences between like directing and screenwriting and acting? Like, which one did you find like resonated with you the most?
I mean, I stumbled into producing probably because it kind of touched a lot of things that I'm naturally inclined to do in life, which is help people. Like, I started out as a teacher, and I like for someone to say like, oh, I want to do something, I just don't know how. And I'm like, well, let's take a moment and figure it out, and that's like kind of got me down the road of producing a little bit. And then I just kind of, started to find a way to sustain a living in it. But if you ask what like fuels my heart and soul, I very much love the writing, directing, acting experience that I had on You and I. This has definitely probably been the most creative, fulfilling experience, and also challenging. And I feel like I've grown so much just realizing what my voice is as an artist, and not being afraid to say out loud that I am an artist, and not being afraid to kind of counter people that say things like, oh, I thought she was just a producer. If I have to hear the words just one more time, like, oh, I was just a producer, or, these things, like that's a lot of hard work, Yeah. I couldn't have been a writer, director, actor, editor on this movie had I not produced for 15 years, learning how to like make things. So, but I loved, I think I just loved the experience that I had on You and I, which was very non-traditional. It was like lightning in a bottle. I'll be blessed from the heavens if I get to do it like this again. And I really fell in love with editing because I've always loved puzzles. Like, as a child, like that was my jam, was like, you give me a puzzle, I'll sit there and do it from start to finish. I don't care how many pieces that is.
Yeah.
And I kind of fell in love with editing that way too, was, putting it together, which I'd never done that before this film. So that was a lot of fun to learn.
Okay. So like speaking about you and I, obviously like just released kind of your baby, like you said, you touched on like literally every aspect of it. So like kind of like, what was the process of this, like getting it done and getting it made? And like, how did you go from like screenwriting to actually like filming it? And then this final product, like how long did it take you to get it to this point?
Well, what's funny is the hardest part took me the least amount of time. During the pandemic in late 2020, the pandemic was very hard for me. I felt like I was losing my career. I had some health things I had to deal with. And I just felt like I was losing control of so many aspects of my life. And I wanted to regain it in some way. And so I would just go outside and start walking and listening to music. And I just had this idea. It's like, well, if I'm going to go out, like if it's going to be over, I'm going to go out on my own terms. So I'm going to like swing for the fences. And I'm just going to put it all out there. And I'm going to be brave. And I had this word on a Post-it, don't hold back. So I had this idea, like during this time, I was cleaning out closets like everyone's doing. And I started rewatching old movies that I loved. And one was Splendor in the Grass, which is one of my favorite films, Natalie Wood and Warren Beatty's first feature. And it's about these two young lovers, from different sides of the tracks type thing, set in a small town. And at the end of that film, I was thinking what would it be like if like these two people met each other again? And at that same time, I was like reading old love letters I had and reading journal entries I'd written. And I thought, there's something here touching me. And so then all the music I would listen to would be about love and relationships and, timing and things. So I outlined the story in 2 days, over note cards, just index cards. And then I wrote the first draft in 10 days. Okay. And I wrote it for the people involved. At that same time, I had binge watched Rectify and saw Clayne Crawford, my co-star's work, and was just bewitched by him as an actor. And I thought, who is this guy? And he reminded me of like Warren Beatty that I'd just been watching. And I was like, I'm going to write this for this guy. So I wrote it for him and like total naive or just doing it. So I feel like I just manifested, like I just thought, all right, I'm going to write this movie. I'm going to write it for these people. I'm going to direct it. I know if I can get him to say yes, I could probably raise a little bit of money. And that's what I did. I raised just enough money to like get it shot. So from having a completed draft in September to December 31st, I prepped the movie, got the cast, raised enough money to get in a can, found the locations, got the crew members on board that would be willing to come out during COVID, because this was pre-vaccine, mind you.
Yeah.
And so I got the crew out. They come out in January of 2021, and we shot for 14 days in January, wrapped principal photography February 4th. So within like 6 months, I went from an idea to having a film in the can, which is just berserk.
Very rare.
Very rare. Like, what the Hello Kitty? Like, I don't know what's going on. But it happened. And so then I started editing. And Clayne and I started this process together of editing the film together in a collaborative way. Like, and by that, I mean, like, I cut it, he would watch it, we would talk about it, different scenes and stuff. So it was nice to, like, for actors to guide the edit is a little weird too. I don't know that I would always suggest that, but for our film, it was perfect. And so then from 2021 to 2022, we're editing. I was trying to finish post. I was blessed that I got this grant from the Polish Film Institute to help finish post. So that helped me get my color and post picture. And then also during that time, I was working other jobs in film, saving up money to be able to finish post because I didn't raise enough money for post production. So I had to like work, make money, make progress on the film. So I would, have to reinvest my own money into the film. And then once we hit the festival circuit We did Nashville, New Orleans, and River Run, and then the American Film Festival in Poland. And that's when we were blessed that Slated saw the film through the New Orleans slate, and they reached out to me inquiring about distribution rights. So that was probably in about 2023-ish some point. Okay. And or early 2020, late 2023, early 2024. And so they come on board for us as our distributor and plan and helped, get the film, our theatrical release, which just happened in LA and working on a few other cities. And then we'll be out online in December. So it's an emotional long marathon to make a movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I was 2021 till now.
Yeah, well, 2020, because yeah, I know this because I turned 40 in July of 2020. And then, so it's always, for a woman, that's a big milestone. I think that was part of my come to Jesus of I'm just going to do what I want to do. I got to do it now. And so I did it. And, here I am 4 years later about to hit the next milestone of 45. And wow, I have my child's about ready to get in kindergarten. Get it out there.
Yeah. I mean, and here it is. And, you got it done. I think that was a very unique kind of road to get here. Because like you said, it doesn't really happen kind of in 6 months from start to finish. Normally it takes years to even get a script off the ground and all this stuff. And then to write it specifically for one person and for that person to accept it and to get them in. It's that was a great sequence of events that happened for you that.
It was just kismet. And it was just, so for all that to happen so fast and get it done. But then once you get it in the can to getting it out in the world is such a long period of time. I mean, 6 months to get it in the can. And then here we are now almost 3 years later from that,
yeah,
it's emotionally taxing. And two, through that time, I shot it during a premiere. I had my festival run during a strike, so couldn't promote it and have the big festival thing. The craziest thing was that we had, I think it was either maybe my first or last international screening when the strike ended. And I'm just ah!
Yeah.
So that's why this release is, means a lot to me because, I didn't get to have the big moments that I was really pushing for reasons I couldn't control. I couldn't control that there was a strike, So once again, that whole theme of not being able to control things and, putting roadblocks in front of you and just trying to find ways to get around them.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that aren't in film or don't really understand the industry, don't really understand how difficult it is to actually get something out and made. It's not just you shoot it and you put it out. There's so many other things that go behind it, and it's always wild to hear the stories that people had and went through to get their films to where they are now.
Mm-hmm. And still trying, I mean, get it out there, get it in the world, get people to see it, to talk about it, and be a part of the conversation of, of the films that are out there now. And just to be a part of the conversation is a win in itself. And hopefully the conversations are nice.
Yeah. There's nothing you can never control, you can never control.
You never know.
So, I mean, obviously, do you think you would have been able to get to this point if you didn't have those years of being a producer and kind of understanding the whole process of it?
No, I don't think I would have, to be honest with you. And also, I don't think if I would have made a movie when I started my film career, I know it would probably not be a great movie. And I'm not implying that the movie I made is great. Obviously, I think it's wonderful. It's the film I wanted to make. It's of my voice. It has an emotional maturity to it that I definitely would not have been able to bring to a film as a 26-year-old woman versus a 40-year-old. So I think for me, the storytelling aspect would have never been the same quality. The earnestness and the honesty and the vulnerability And two, I made some decisions in writing the film. Like, I didn't want there to be a villain in the movie. I wanted both people to be portrayed, fairly. And the only villain in the film is really time. Yeah. And I don't really know that I would have had the emotional maturity to recognize that in failed relationships at that time in my life, versus now looking back. But then also the skill to be able to say, okay, I got to write for these exact locations. I will not write a scene there's no exterior night dialogue scene in my film. There's no background actors in the film. I wanted to shoot our storyline in order. So knowing that like I'd write a scene for a location and then we never return to that location. The film takes place over like 5 days, so we don't have a lot of costumes. Like, I would have never thought about any of these things right out of the gate, ever.
Yeah. I mean, that's one aspect about the film is that it is like a very intimate and intense affair. Like you said, there's not like a lot of background actors. Not really. There's only 2 other real actors that kind of really show up in this film. But it's mostly between these 2 characters. And like you get this intensity and intimacy from it that like really like creates this very mature kind of atmosphere. And like you pointed out, like there wasn't necessarily like one antagonist. Like there was, like I said, it was time and circumstances. And like, I think that was something that came through like very well in the film.
Thank you.
How did you kind of set up some of the camera shots? Because like it was kind of like shot in a very specific way where it felt like these moments are very private and like you're kind of like peering into these people's lives, almost like in a way that you shouldn't be. But I think it was kind of shot intentionally like that.
Yeah, it definitely was. One of my, like, I like to go in with some ground rules. Even like when I'm writing, I tell my things like about the exterior night and these things, like just set like parameters, just help me like know what to work in. So when I decided like, I'd never directed a movie before. I, knew about camera. I felt more confident in framing than I did other things because I knew the taste and aesthetic I just liked as a human. And luckily, an angel named Bruce Theory Chung was sent from the heavens, my director of photography, that we connected. And he shot the film, and he's just so kind and calm and beautiful and just has a really present heart and eye. And when we were talking about the film, we kind of made the rule that like we never wanted to be the camera as close to the people as they felt with each other. And I also wanted the film to always, I knew I wanted the ending big intimate scenes to be in close-ups. So in order for that to like mean something, you need to like not have it for the rest of the film. So that helped me decide like, okay, it would be at a distance. And then also I knew it would be in close-ups. So most of the rest of the film, there's something between the camera and the audience, whether it's a door frame, a mirror, like you said, peering around a corner, outside looking in, inside looking out, something like that, so that I could create that distance so that you feel a little bit like, oh, should I be here? This seems very personal. And so that when you are in the moment where you're normally definitely not supposed to be there, it feels perfect that you are seeing it because you've been emotionally like led there. At least I hope it doesn't feel unsettling for people. It feels more naturalistic and raw and intimate and beautiful in a way because you're there sharing this special moment with these people that you've been watching from a distance for quite a while. So I'm appreciative that you noticed that and glad that I can talk about Bruce's talents as well to help guide us there.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely came through in the film. It was like something that like I immediately picked up on, like, okay, like you don't necessarily see this kind of point of view very often in films and stuff, you know, so it's like, it was very eye-catching. Obviously there are like a lot of there's like a lot of dialogue and like a lot of scenes where they're like, you know, having this long, deep conversations, which I'm assuming led to some like long takes. So like what was some of the toughest parts, like kind of filming like these long takes? How many times did it take to do some of these scenes, and like kind of like how it was handled in that aspect?
Well, luckily, That's another thing that I knew is that I did want long takes. I didn't want to shoot a lot of coverage. We didn't do tons of takes, to be honest with you. We would always run the whole scene pretty much every time. And being blessed to have a co-star that's willing to do that when they're not on camera is a big deal. So any scene, Clayne and I would run every scene every time together, no matter whether it's a single or a two shot for each other. Like no one ever just went off and sat down and twiddled their thumbs.
That's nice.
It's so nice. Are you kidding me? Like I'm spoiled. So that was really good to be able to do. Sometimes we would pick up in the middle a little bit if we might be running a little long, but most off we just would run the whole scene a couple of times. And when we knew that it felt good or that the mood wasn't changing too much, it would kind of move on. So most things we did anywhere from 2 to 4 takes ish. There was a few things, to be quite honest with you, the hardest damn thing to shoot in the movie was there's a scene where I have to walk upstairs and I'm really frightened about falling. So that took 9 times. So that was a bit crazy.
Okay, but not too many takes. So you're not like a Stanley Kubrick type director. We're gonna run this like 75 times.
Oh God, no. Oh no. I feel like for us in this kind of film, when you feel it and you know it's there. And so why waste time? Last week I watched, which felt so surreal. I watched an interview behind the scenes about the bridges of Madison County, which is a film that must have been like in my psyche, embedded in me as I made You and I, because there's a lot of similarities that I didn't even realize until like listening. And they did very similar, like Clint Eastwood doesn't shoot a lot of coverage and takes, and they kept things at a distance, except in some intimate scenes and stuff. So, and I don't think you have to like run scenes in the ground to get a perfect performance.
Yeah.
Some people do, and that's what works. But for this story, that wasn't necessary because these people are experiencing like each other fresh for the first time in a really long time. So if we kept running it, it would kind of like change the film a little bit. I feel like the little slight awkwardness, but yet excitement to be in each other's presence wouldn't be felt as much, I don't think, if we kept doing everything all like so many times.
Do you think being an actor, like having experience as acting, kind of helped you shape you as a director and kind of understand that kind of dynamic a little bit better? Because I do feel like a lot of people that do like these long takes don't really have that kind of acting experience also as well.
Well, I don't have any real I don't consider myself an actor until now that I've made this film. Like I have had small parts in movies, but like if someone say, "Hey, Summer, are you an actor?" I would have never said that until like now, really.
Okay.
I tried to be an actor, but I never really had extensive formal training. I'd never had a leading role in anything except one short film that I did in my like early 20s, which I'm really proud of. But now doing the acting and directing, I do love acting, and I like the long take process a lot. Okay. I do. I like it a lot. I think it's good to like be able to feel the moment from start to finish. I don't like feeling like, how you go to the circus or things and there's the little monkeys that they make dance or whatever. And they're like, dance monkey, and I'm like, I can't act like that. Like, I can't just like do it. So I need to like, I'm not that good yet. Maybe one day if I have the privilege to keep being in films and having roles, maybe I'll get better and I'll be able to be a little bit more like a light switch. But I'm not there yet. And I like being able to be in a long take and in a space in a wide shot because I like to feel like I could move around a little bit. in the
Yeah.
space and feel a little bit natural versus just standing there and being like, don't move off your mark.
Yeah. Well, we reset everything and like, yeah, run the next. Yeah.
That was probably my weakest thing as an actor, was like hitting my mark. But again, God bless Clayne. He was so nice that if I was having a single and he was acting off camera, he would move so and I would always be looking at him, and he knew how to move to make my eye line work for camera.
Yeah.
So, he's the professional. I mean, he's like 20 years experience, and this is like my first. So he was very much helpful to do little things like that. Or if we'd be in scene, sometimes when our feet's not in the scene, he's slightly kicking my feet a little in a few takes to get me to where I need to be. So I thought that was very generous. And I don't know that I'll get that type of scene made in the future, but it's nice.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Clayne Crawford, obviously, like he's had a very, successful lengthy career, and he's been in like a lot of very well received things, and from TV to film and everything between. And like you mentioned a little bit, but like how was your experience with them? How was it like working with him, and like just in general, like how was he as an actor in this?
Yeah, I mean, he, gosh, what a career, like 20 years. It's funny because when I binge watched Rectify, I didn't know him at all, even recognize as an actor, until I went and I was like, wait a minute, that's the bully from A Walk to Remember, because A Walk to Remember was made in North Carolina, and Southern Girl, like romance story. I was like, wait a minute, that's that guy. But that was like, moons later. And Rectify was like 7 years old by the time I saw it. So I was like, what does this guy look like now? And so I like Googled him and saw like, oh, he's in this movie called A Killing of Two Lovers. And I watched this interview where he was talking about his role like as a father and his connection to his children. And he got emotional in it. And it just made me see something in him that's very vulnerable and very human. And also he felt very, there's something about him that felt very comfortable to me, but maybe because too, he's also Southern, but grew up on a farm. So we have a lot of the same type of background. And then, so it naturally felt right. And I really enjoyed the fact that, he'd never made a romance movie really before. So I like the idea that if I'm going to be doing so many first and something new, that even though he's like so experienced, at least this something is a little bit new to him too. So I don't feel like, if we're going to jump in the deep end, let's just jump in together, right? So that I really liked a lot, was to be able to do that. And he's very smart, one of the smartest people like that I've met, just in terms of talking about film and the moment and being able to talk about scenes with such emotional honesty. And, he's very encouraging to me. And that was very nice to feel like somebody was on your side and didn't abandon me and, stay around in post. Cause, I did a lot of this alone and during a time where people were alone. So it was nice to have a teammate to, keep you motivated sometimes when you think you're doing, you're getting frustrated or feeling down about it, for somebody to like remind you every once in a while of what you have done and what you're doing. And so that was nice. I learned a lot. Like, I've been on sets, obviously, with some very famous seasoned actors, and I've seen different types of actors on set. And he reminds me very much of, there's certain actors you watch that just are technically so good. Like, just knows how to meet the marks, knows where the camera is, knows how to use the space just very quickly. Like, he's a pro, whereas I'm like still figuring things out a little, but that was really lovely to be able to have someone that is somewhat of could mentor you, but also is still an equal in certain ways with you in terms of, trying something new.
Okay. I mean, it definitely sounds like you guys had chemistry right away, like kind of
Yeah.
like had that emotion, and it came through. It came through in the film, especially like definitely felt like you guys had like almost known each other for like a good amount of time. Like you guys were comfortable working together.
Yeah, I didn't know him at all until I wrote this. He was a stranger, you know. I knew the other people in the film. I was blessed that like I had known Linz Edwards and Ashley Shelton for a couple of years because I was familiar with their other work. And then Charlotte, the musician that's on Zoom, is someone that I know from North Carolina. So Clayne was actually the one human that I didn't know. And so it was nice to be able to get to know someone along the way. And I just feel very lucky that, the chemistry did feel natural. Like people keep telling me like, oh, how did you make the chemistry? I'm like, I never, I was never a good kid in science in school. Like science isn't my thing. So I didn't understand chemistry then, and I don't understand it now. I just know like when it happens, things happen, in chemistry. If you put things together, either something blows up or something dissolves or whatever. So I guess the chemistry is that, our personalities matched. And also too, I think just our similar goals in our careers. And, I was making this film with hopes to kind of move my career a little bit in a different direction. And he had just come off of moving his career in a little bit of different direction, having come off some TV work and doing Killing of Two Lovers and indie film and getting back to some of those roots. So I think that he empathized with why I was doing what I was doing, even more than like what I was actually doing.
Yeah. So you just had your premiere.
I did. Mm-hmm.
How'd that go? What was the response from people? Like, how was that night? What was it like finally seeing this like to the wider world? And like, what was that feeling?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's always, a dream to like have a red carpet, see the name of your movie on a marquee, and to do it like in California, like such a big deal, to be able to like get all dressed up and, have some people of the crew was able to come, and that was really special that Bruce was there, and Carly, a musician I collaborated with, also came, and then all the team from Slated was there. And then to have some other filmmaking friends be there was so nice. But what always hits me most is really the strangers that come up to me about the movie. Pretty much every screening, people come up and share with me their love stories or some type of memory that they have of like, oh, I had a Sarah in my life, or I have a Joseph. And that makes me feel good. Like, I don't know that I can control how wide the film will make it in the market, but I do know and feel that people connect with it.
Yeah. And
they tell me that they feel like they knew who I was in a way. And, I don't take offense to that. I think that's very flattering and very kind, and is probably the best praise I could get as a filmmaker is for someone to say that they connected and related to the story I told. And that's just like, check, win.
Yeah, definitely. That's the goal for most people making films, especially. It's like, you don't want to put out something that nobody can relate to or connect to in some sort of way. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And especially, I'm even surprised, like, a lot of men are getting into the romance world a little bit more like surprised than I thought. Like, I remember in New Orleans, this older man was talking to me about some specific scenes, and he was like, you got me all teared up. And I'm like, and this is like big brutal guy. And he's like, you got me teared up here about this scene. I didn't know what she was going to do. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah. So I appreciate the two. I really appreciate that, men and women alike are giving the film a chance and not pigeonholing it as a romance made for a specific audience, that this is, a film that happens to be a love story. But to me, it's a movie about memories and regret and just life and love. And I don't care who you are. Everyone's got those things in their life.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So you said, where can people kind of watch this in the future? You said maybe some more theaters, streaming officially in December.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, early December is when we're looking to have it on the World Wide Web.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't have the platforms just yet, but we'll be able to hopefully have those soon so we can get that into the world. And then I do have like social media stuff where people can come on over and follow us along at You and I, the movie on Instagram. And then I also just started like my little filmmaker website, summershelton.com, that people could go and look at the other movies that I've made behind the camera and celebrate the work of those filmmakers and artists. And then our trailer's out, which people are really loving watching and stuff, to get a little sneak peek if they want to like get a little taste of what this little love story is about. They can take a watch at that.
Yeah, we'll have all that kind of info that we have down below where you're watching and listening to this. And
Ooh.
so now that you have like this little short 5-year journey done, like, does this make you want to hop back into another one? Like, what's next?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, immediately. Yeah, I've produced a lot for first time writer directors. And one thing I tell them is I strongly encourage filmmakers when they make their first film, when they get in post production, be thinking about what they want to do next. When they're out in the world in festivals and they can have something to talk about, or at least know like what direction they want to go next. And so I definitely I didn't want to be a hypocrite here. I did the same thing. So as soon as I got in the edit, I started seeking out material for what I wanted to do next. And so I have it in my head. I know what I want to do. I've got it about 70% written. And I'm really excited about it. And I hope that if I get blessed to be able to make another movie, that I can make it, because I know it's a privilege to be able to make a film and to have that opportunity, so I really hope that I get to do it again so I can just try to keep getting better.
Well, now you have the proof, to show people like, hey, like I can do this. I've done this. Like, take a look at this.
Yeah, and, I got the proof. Like, I got to show you what you want me to write, you want me to direct, you want me to produce, act, edit, what it is. Like, I got it here, which too is part of why I made it, was because I thought that like I could use it to help me in my professional teaching career as well. Like for teaching, like at colleges and universities and things like, oh, have you ever did this job? I'm like, yeah, here's my movie. Here's a movie we made. So
you got a little filmography going on,
I got that CV, checking in those boxes. And so I would love to do the same setup again. I mean, that would be really cool. And that would be really nice. I mean, it would be a blessing.
All right. Well, fingers crossed. And, we really liked the film. I think it was very impressive, especially for your first time out. And like, I could definitely see this resonating with a lot of people, and hopefully, get a lot more eyes on there and do whatever we can to help with that. And on that. And thank you for taking time out and talk to us.
Oh, I'm so grateful. This is such a wonderful memory to have with my first film, is having you a part of the journey. So you're part of my memory, and I'm really grateful.
Thank you.